Welcome back! Tying that guy.
God, too much
I'm
coffee.
Wes Chatham. This is the enthusiasm for this fans. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good pal Ty Franck. This is James S.A. Corey's better half. Daniel Abraham, our commander-in-chief. Naren Shankar. We call him Dr. Shank. And Breck Eisner. Not sure what he does.
One of my least favorite people in the world.
He's always here hanging around.
Yeah.
By the way, just so you know, we have an embargo on. There's no compliments to Breck on this show. Okay.
All right. Yes.
Cool.
Finally. That won't be like on set where you're always complimenting
It
me.
is a rule for tying that guy that you do not compliment Breck. And if we say something nice, we call him the unnamed director.
The unnamed director.
Yeah.
I also think you need to know it's not Dr. Shank anymore. It's Brave Squirrel. He only wants to be known as Brave Squirrel.
Brave Squirrel.
I love this nickname. You know, the squirrel is brave. That's something you don't expect out of a squirrel.
Right.
Which is awesome. Why is the squirrel brave? The squirrel is brave because he comes to the window expecting a peanut. The universe is going to be kind to him. That's called optimism.
Until a coyote eats it.
Oh.
Well, and the thing is, Naren isn't going to kill the squirrel.
I'm not
There's a
going to
level
kill
of
the squirrel,
trust
yeah.
that has built up between Naren and the squirrel. There's a relationship there. Either Naren is domesticating the squirrel or the squirrel is domesticating
Okay,
Naren.
yeah,
I love
now
that
I know,
little squirrel.
but the question I have
We've already gone
to
off
get
on
this
a tangent.
to
by
get
the
this
way.
back on the show, the question I have is, how much does your relationship with that squirrel influence your writing of the show?
Well, I talk to the squirrel. The squirrel gives me pointers.
Is this a euphemism?
Son of Sam
I think I've read about that.
Son of Sam had his dog. I mean,
Right.
I think
You have the squirrel.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
look, back to the show. I think a good way to start this out is we each go through and we talk about our favorite Amos acting moments. And we go through.
Okay, now we're done with that. We're done with that, and so let's move on. Covered all of them.
So 601,
601.
written by Dr. Shank,
Brave Squirrel.
Brave squirrel.
directed by
The unknown.
the unnamed director.
Breckenridge.
The thing that Wes and I were talking about before you guys got here and ruined this is
It was growing great.
the challenge that we had this year that we've never had before was we shot the first and last episode at the same time. And from a writing side, that's challenging because normally we have the most time to finish the last script. So you really get to polish that last one. You really get to work on it for a while. We had to have it done, ready to prep before the first day of shooting. And that was a little challenging on the writing side. But on the directing side, that had to be a little tough too, doing the first and last at the same time.
I mean, the hardest part was the fact that the script was terrible.
Yeah, it was.
Because you didn't have time to do it. So,
It was pretty rough.
yeah, that
well,
sucks.
because you had Daniel and I and Naren all working on it.
yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
No, it was.
It's like a lowest common denominator thing.
Yeah.
We like to go down, bring each other down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was nervous about it, to be honest. Like, because the way we shoot is, as we all know, but the viewer might not, we block shoot. So if we're shooting on the Rossi, we'll film the stuff from episode 1 on the same day we might shoot scenes from episode 6. And the journey and the actors have gone through a massive, as these seasons have, these massive journeys you guys go through from episode 1 to whatever the last episode is. And you have to switch quickly from, okay, I'm at the beginning of this to whatever my character's situation is. I might be in the same chair, talking to the same people, in the same wardrobe is the reality of this show, with the same lighting and all the, but the character dynamic is completely
Yeah, the
different.
emotional context.
It's a challenge. It's for the actors.
How many scripts did we give you at that point? Because I know we almost had the whole season, but how many did you guys actually
No,
read?
we had I think we had 1 and 2, and then we got the last one.
Okay,
When we were going into
Yeah.
shooting.
Right, we were
And
still working on 3, 4, and 5.
I remember calling you like I do late at night. But anyway, no, but I remember calling you and being like, Ray, so what happened here? And trying to feel in the middle of the thing going forward as we do this.
What I'm remembering now is the whole Amos Bobby thing, because that had not been worked out.
Yeah.
We had actually not gotten that stuff sort of where we wanted.
We were still figuring it
and
out.
It was a big issue because how that happens at the end, their relationship, what gets them to that point, how the actual end of that battle on the ring station works out. That was all kind of in process, and so we had a lot of conversations about that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to take a step back. When we know that we're going forward with season 6, and you sit down and you're creating this show, season 6 specifically, what was important for you to hit? What was important for you to communicate?
Boy, that's a big question.
Hey, we always give him the hard questions.
Well, I mean, that's the conversation
brave
that
squirrel.
Ty and Daniel and I have together. I mean, it's like we're always talking about, like, what do we want to hit? What can we leave out? I mean, 6 episodes as a framework is as tight as we've ever done. I mean, you know, we had 10 episodes season 1, and then 10 episodes in season 5. That's a tight framework to tell that amount of story. And so we were lucky because we had a chunk of Drummer's storyline had been essentially borrowed from book 6 and put into season 5. But aside from that, it was really talking about a lot of the compression, like how do we hit everything in this time span.
I was actually talking to, I think it was you or Breck the other day, of how I am so impressed with what you were able to fit into this season. It also feel lived in. And that moment that we were talking about, of going and sitting and having dinner, you know, and really stopping before that build-up, it was really great. Now, when we were talking about this, is basically like going into a war movie, right? So, what, from a director's technique, what do you use to create that claustrophobic, manic energy, aggressive?
I mean, Naren and I, we first talked about like what the feeling is of the episode. I mean, that's kind of an interesting question to ask, like, what do you want to get out of it? Like, each season when I come into it, I come in a little later, obviously, than these guys who are writing it and breaking story. We talk about what's the feeling of the episode, of the season, how's it different than the previous season, which is nice. I think one of the things that's been great about The Expanse is each season has its own kind of identity, and like it exists on its own. So this was that concept you're talking about, like the war, you know, the kind of what's it like to be in the trenches, to be in the war, to have a mission but not really know how to achieve it. And so it's the fog of war, the exhaustion of being in there, and then always this idea of being in a sub movie. You know, we watched a bunch of sub movies, and like, what is it like being in an enclosed metal coffin for months at a time? You know, we kind of don't touch on that subject so much in the other seasons, because the spaceship is the Rocinante, and the other ships are where you live. It's your home. There's a warmth to it. Like, but this was more of like this feeling of a coffin. Like, we're trapped in here, and like life is on hold while we try and fight this war. And so it nerves are frayed, and it affects performance. And we decided to go with a different type of lighting, which is like
technique.
Yeah, camera technique. We handheld, more intimate and closer. And it just and what I love is in the editing and in the finish, we let it breathe. Like the scenes, it's not like you're in the dialogue and out. You're like, we're there. There's silent moments and looks and expressions and exhaustion, and it really permeates all the performances. I mean, most importantly, obviously, there's the look and the sounds, but it's the performances that are primary. And so, how are the relationships frayed? How are the people at different places than they were when we saw them before?
Well, other than Wes's performance.
So you're saying that the actors are the most important?
Always, except for you, except for Wes.
I do remember one change that happened while you were still working on episode 1, that you're talking about dropping right into the war movie. Is the original version of episode 1 started after they had killed the Belter ship. It started with the post-kill.
That's right.
That's right.
And,
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
them talking about the fact that they had just killed this Belter ship. And I don't remember who gave you the note, but somebody said, well, why can't we see that?
We got a network note about that saying, well, could we see the battle? And I said, no, we don't see the battle. It's not the point. And then I was writing the scene. I go, this scene sucks. It's so fucking boring. And so when the draft came out, I remember your reaction.
Yeah.
This wasn't in the outline. This is really good.
I also want to shoot a battle. Come on.
I was really just like, oh, this just sucks.
But as far as dropping the viewer right into the war,
Yes.
I mean, the very first thing we see is the Rossies dodging missiles.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
And everybody's haggard and sleep
everything's
circles
all
under their
messed up.
eyes
Yeah.
and exhausted.
It became a way to communicate that idea of like, you know, I mean, the classic is like, you know, the platoon in Vietnam just kind of creeping through the jungle and everybody's fucking afraid and scared and everything
tense.
else. And then suddenly, you know, boom, guns are going off everywhere. That was the idea. It's like if we're in a war movie, that's the way to punctuate a war movie.
Yeah.
What I loved about it was the counterpoint. Like, it's the adrenaline, life or death, intense moment. Then immediately after it, it's back to that boredom and like the end. What do we do next? And that counterpoint was really interesting. I thought great.
We're doing a difficult thing, which is we're trying to use the time between the seasons, right? The 8 months or whatever we said in the show, to convey that these are people who've been at war for that time, and it's worn them down. And it was just a really nice way to sort of do that in a very economical and compact fashion.
And since we all felt like we had been at war for 7 years,
That's right.
and we were all worn down, it just felt very natural. I did want to ask Daniel about that. So when you started out, unlike me, because I started out as an expert, When Daniel started
Born
out,
as an expert.
yeah. When Daniel started out, he had never written a screenplay that had been produced before.
Nope.
And now here you are, 6 years later, and you're not just writing a screenplay. You and Naren and me and Dan Nowak and the other members of the writers' room, we were gang writing every script.
Yeah.
Like the whole group, we were all taking scenes from every script, doing it, working the whole thing together, and in the middle of a pandemic where we were all in different locations doing it over the internet. Talk about what the writing process felt like this year.
Well, it was more connected for me because I got to be in my traditional writing space with my, my coffee machine and my family, but also disembodied in a really weird way. We have this chat room set up where we're all talking to each other, and it's all audio. We don't actually see each other. We don't do little Zoom meeting pictures. So, like, coming out here now and being face to face with you and with Naren, while you've been voices in my head, you've been voices in my room for like ever. Now there's like faces, and I've kind of forgotten how this works.
Do you wish they would go back to voices now?
They're going back to voices as soon as they go home. But the sense of collaboration this year, especially because of the weird situation, because of the amount of time we've spent working together. The idea of one script being somehow separate from another really degraded for me. It was, if you ask me which episode a particular scene was in, I have to look now because it all just
It was one big story.
It all just kind of faced together, and we were working on something at the same time.
Yeah, we were trying to get everything done at once, and everybody essentially took like a story. When we're breaking the episodes down, took like a story thread. Like one person was in charge of kind of laying out the story of Marco and Philip. I think that was Dan. That was Dan's side.
Yeah, Dan did a lot of Marco and Philip.
So we had kind of broken it up because there's a continuity when you write that way to laying out the arcs and really putting the story together that we could all kind of step back and then get a very clear overview of the season. And obviously things change, even beyond that. But that's this particular 6 episode run. It made a lot of sense to do it that way.
The other thing is there was no actual like office hours because when we were in Los Angeles and we had the writers room, we would come at a time, we would work till a time, we would leave. But I was home the whole time, so it's like 8 at night, and Naren has an idea, and he pings me, and we talk, and I turn to my daughter and say it's very important when you grow up to have a job with very clear boundaries. Boundaries. Otherwise, it's going to be like this for you.
Oh, well, then that brings in, this is one thing I've always wanted to ask you guys, because coming from writing novels and filmmaking is such a collaborative art, what was that transition, that process back from basically you sitting down and being complete in control of the world that you're creating to now being in a place where you're working with other writers, you're working with actors that are like, about this line, what was that transition like?
Well, for The Expanse in particular, it was not that big a shift because it was already a collaboration between me and Ty. Yeah. I mean, we had already kind of agreed that this was neither of ours individually. It was already kind of collaborative. So expanding that collaboration wasn't that hard. Going from writing my own stuff that's just mine to the collaboration. This isn't actually the first collaboration I've done either. So I have some experience writing novels that way, writing short stories that way. It's a little weird kind of giving up that control. I also enjoy writing the stuff that I have all the control, but I'm not always convinced it's better. So
what was the decision? Because Stray Dogs comes out after the season, right? It comes out. It was after book 6.
The novella came out after book 6.
So the decision to bring it up and incorporate it into this season.
Well,
and what was that highlighting?
I love that novella. When I think it came out when it was like season 2 or 3, I think. Actually,
yeah, we started working on the show when we were writing book 4. Okay. So it'd probably been 2 or 3.
Yeah, and we got the manuscript of it, and I read it, and it was me. It just kind of loved it, and I hadn't read that far in the books yet. But so when we got to that point, it was really about. We ended season 5 on this weird mystery. The ship goes through the ring, the protomolecule sample's been sent to Laconia.
Something weird happens.
Something weird happens, and the ship gets eaten. Without something
stuff.
like Strange Dogs, you couldn't have touched the story of the protomolecule. You couldn't have touched the story of what those rogue Martians were doing on that planet with Cortazar, the protomolecule scientist. You couldn't have touched any of those elements. And the protomolecule was such an important motor in the show, because it really was the spark that got everything going, and it's been the engine to drive so much of the story. We felt we had to address it, and it also explains like Marco's alliance with the Martians, how he got those ships, what he paid for them, and what they were getting out of it as well. And we couldn't just leave that hanging. Mm-hmm. And so it was a great way to sort of give an explanation, but also have this kind of beautiful little vignette that goes across the season, which is a nice visual signature in a different environment. It had a lot of pluses, and I really loved the novella.
Those are easy to shoot.
Oh, so easy. So easy.
And so cheap.
Children.
Oh my children.
Talk a little bit more
animals.
Talk about the set.
I mean, the crazy thing is, so it's Toronto. It's winter, at night with children. So
we don't want to kill children
right.
by putting them out in the actual.
And we've almost killed Wes in season 5. It was so
time
cold.
consuming.
But now we know there's a pet cemetery on Laconia. You just go bury me and we're good. That's where the dogs are going. I was like, wait a minute.
No, but we built the entire forest on one of our stages. Like all inside, like on the biggest stage we had, they took trees and
all real trees.
All real trees, but they were like telephone poles, because when they got them, there was no branches. So
and
every single branch, they had to drill a hole, put in a branch, put in a thing.
Yeah.
There's
it was insane.
Time lapse of that thing.
Oh, is it really?
Wait, where did y'all get like trees? I can just picture like
They were
like at night.
They were for a public works project.
They became for a public works.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They used them in Toronto for a public works after we were done with them.
That's right.
Or so they said.
I pictured everybody in ski masks
I know.
with the saw, like at night, cutting trees all over
Frankie,
Toronto.
quick, come with us. We're going to Manny's house. Let's get some trees. He's got chickens. Watch out for them. But we knew from experience that season 5 when we did the shootout, and it was like 38 below zero at night. There's no way we're going to put kids and control the environment and visual effects and digital
these kids
animals.
were young.
They were young kids.
Young kids.
Because if they're older kids, you would have been fine with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Naren's like, if they're 12 or 13,
Well,
that's cool. They can freeze.
The supply is plentiful.
Right, exactly. That's how that. So so that was a big cost. So Naren's decision to put in the Strange Dogs, which is a great creative decision, had massive financial implications. Sometimes these decisions, which are great for the show, become big decisions.
In fairness, it's not our money, so
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time Brett's done with his episode, there's no money left in the season anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
By the way, the visual effects budget of Block 1 was really somewhat
Sorry about that.
eyebrow-raising.
Sorry. I can't talk about 6, obviously. But there's a lot of money spent in 6.
Yes.
A good amount spent in 1.
And 1 as well.
1 has some money, but 6.
They are the 2 most expensive episodes.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking. We had all that, like...
You've never.
I like the big, it's fun. And so much money to fix Wes's face, all that, like, digital enhancements that we gotta do.
Well, it's more his body. The muscles. The muscles are all CG.
There's a scene I actually want to talk about, which, if I can bring up a subject,
No.
is that allowed?
No.
Okay, sorry,
No.
sorry. Go ahead.
Speak when spoken
Okay,
to.
sorry.
Only we may dance.
Sorry. I'm here to control myself. Control myself.
The guy.
The scene with you and Dom, it was like, sometimes the scenes you think about a lot, the big scenes like Steven on the asteroid and all the stuff about how to build that and all, and then there's the small scenes, which is a dialogue scene between Wes and Dom when you guys have that conversation in the machine shop. Mm-hmm. And that's my favorite scene in the episode, because it was like, your relationship has always been one that's like a really specific and wonderful relationship and interesting, but it's always been that same relationship from the first time we met you until this episode. And then we have this moment where there's a conflict. Mm-hmm. And do you remember shooting this? How tricky to get it right. And how, because we rehearse when we can, but in COVID, we couldn't do the real amount of rehearsal that we normally do.
Not the blocking rehearsals, right?
We could not the blocking. I mean, we do rehearsals like on our own typically, but we weren't allowed to. Although sometimes we did.
Because we were shooting that with motion, with me coming downstairs and then walking into the argument.
Yeah.
And the issue that I had was it's too intimidating of a move.
Yeah.
Physically to do that, because with this relationship, Amos would never, but
threaten her.
Would never threaten her, and it was just by virtue of me walking towards her, it looked threatening, and so to create the tone of the.
But the way you and Dom can take something like a strong physical walk and slightly soften it by a look or the way you hold yourself and the way Dom approaches and how you have the conversation, but back off all those minutia of performance. I'm like really proud of that scene because it was a hard one to pull off.
Right.
And I got what you guys wanted from it. Like they had to be in conflict, but not. It shouldn't look like Amos is going to kill her, or that Dom's just angry at him. That Naomi,
but there's certainly a conflict. And
Sure.
for me, I think this season is really addressing, ever since that first betrayal, ever since her taking, when she hid the protomolecule and did not tell me.
Sure.
And it never really has been the same between us. We reconciled, but when you see us in episode 1, season 1, the type of relationship that we had, and that first betrayal, and that spun me in this journey.
Yeah.
And this season is now really addressing that and reconciling that relationship that we've had.
But it's how, like, what I love about the show is it's how the writing is wonderful and the world is wonderful, but unless the actors truly know how to embody these characters over the multi-years that it's happening, a scene like that wouldn't work. No matter how well it's written or no matter how well the background is set, that conflict was such a razor's edge to get right. And I was like really proud that we did on that scene.
Well, and so this is good, as a director, when you're approaching that scene,
Yeah.
the challenge is all the things that you're talking about. So how do you make sure as a director that the right thing is being communicated, that the scene is about what it's supposed to be about?
That's a complicated and good question.
It's a complicated question because, and this is one that I think people always find interesting when you get into process.
Yeah.
One, because this is such an interesting thing from a director's perspective, becomes sometimes when two actors come to do a scene, they might have a different idea of what that scene is about.
For sure.
And the director's job is to get everybody on the same page of what this scene means and what it's about.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's about different things for different people and different things for different characters. And so the first thing you do is you watch and listen. For me, it's like we come together. Rehearsal is crucial, as we know. Like I think having time together to work those details out before you're paying however many $1,000 a second you're there. At one point I was like, I added up, I once had to go to the bathroom, like, okay, how much is going to this bathroom going to cost us? And so all that work needs to be done ahead of time because when you're there and everybody's watching you and you're working it out, it's impossible to have an honest conversation. It's impossible to take the time you really need. So it's about talking with the writers, making sure everyone understands it. It's about rehearsing it. And then it's about on the day, because everything changes then on the day. You get the camera and the lights and the movement and the dynamics. And then it's like, letting you guys try it. It's something I've learned and listening. Yeah. And to me, like I like to watch, see what you guys do, so I can understand what their intents are. So rather than say, tell me what the scene's about, you tell me what it's about, let me watch them, and now I know what your thoughts are.
I think we've had such a nice process on this show between writers, actors, and directors that there are times when we will write a scene and we'll see it in dailies or see it up on its feet, and it's not exactly what we thought. But what we have developed in the best possible way is you guys are very faithful to your characters. The directors know the show. And so what comes out of it is incredibly authentic. And many times what will happen is something will emerge that we didn't think about or expect. And that's our rehearsal process. That's how we work it. And I think that's the joy of a good collaboration. Everybody's bringing something to that process, and the end result is greater than anybody just would have done.
Which is going back to what we were talking about with the writing. I mean, with writing the scripts and writing the books, the addition of more voices and more talent and more attention to it brings something that's not coming from any one person. The scripts that we wrote for this season were in a voice that isn't actually any one of ours. And it's the voice of the show.
But I think what Wes is asking, which is an interesting question, is what happens when two actors don't have the same point of view of the scene? How do they come at the scene in different places, different thoughts of what the scene's about, because everyone has their interpretation of it.
Cage match.
Like, we always do that.
Because that's when
that was in that scene. We had like multiple points of view about what that scene is about.
But I think one thing that I'm not sure a lot of people know is that the secret weapon of the Expanse is the generosity of everybody involved, giving their time on the weekends, and that comes down from the leadership. Basically, because what we do is we have these conversations specifically about this scene. We talk about all of our point of views, whatever, and we work together. And whatever decision or choice that happens, I feel so much more confident about it because we've really tried and looked at all angles and all sides. So we really come in. But we do that work and that exploring and that process before we show up on set. And once them lights turn on and the cameras are there, we only have so much time.
Not
and
enough.
I know that a lot of shows suffer if they're doing that work but while they're on set.
I have to speak to that because I've been doing this a long time. This show is so unique in that I don't get those calls from the set where like they've got a problem with this or they don't want to do it this way or we're going to go off the script or this is going to change. We have had all those conversations before. I can't actually recall a time when there was like a significant, a line here or a line there, that kind of thing changes, but not where you're like talking about the meaning of a scene or how to play something or
you don't forget all the times I called it when Wes wouldn't come out of the trailer.
Yeah.
Well, that's
There's a
true.
lot
But that
of
was
those,
about
but
my coffee. That had nothing to do with the scene.
It's interesting that you talk about generosity because this conversation is also making me think about my experience in season 1, which informs all of this. So Daniel and I came into the room. Naren obviously was incredibly generous in mentoring us and helping us learn how to do the process, learn how to write the scripts. But I was also on set in season 1, and our first episode director, our pilot director, Terry McDonough, just took me under his wing and said, I'm going to show you how all this goes. And one of the things he taught me, which you're talking about now, is he said, the first take is for the actors. I don't give them any notes. I let them see what they're trying to do in the scene. And then he goes, okay, I see what everybody's trying to do. And then I might go in and give him a little note.
Yeah, don't do that.
I was going to say, you're not describing Breck.
I'm talking about a good director.
It's usually like, back to one.
The thing is, Breck will groan in the middle of the
He will
scene.
groan, yes.
Breck cannot hide. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He cannot hide his emotions. There are scenes where he's like, it's in the middle of a scene.
Dude, do not be a bad extra on Breck's set. If you're a bad extra, you just hear, can somebody make that guy in the hat go away?
There was a scene. There was a scene that, and I'm not going to talk about the scene or the specific name again, but there was an actor that was having an issue. Well, we're always in a hurry. We don't have a lot of time. And Breck he's intense, man. He's ready to rock. He's got it going planned. And his energy of coming to this guy, and it was like, it scared the shit out of me. It started getting worse. And I was like, Breck, listen, we have to, you say, I like what you're doing, and this is great. Now let's try something different. That's how you go, because then they feel safe and then they go. But right now he's rattled, so he goes, all right. So the next thing, Breck comes up and he's like, I like what you're doing. I see what you're trying to get at. Can we try something completely different? The other direction. All your instincts, throw them out the window.
You know you've done something bad when Breck is shooting the back of your head.
You know what?
And he's sneaky like that. If you are in conflict and you're not getting what he wants, he's like, all right, stand over here.
There is more than one part on our show that is the back of somebody's head and a different voice in the other.
And you never see their face. They're like admirals and UN guys. And
Breck is like, you're dead to me.
do you remember the time we were on season 5? We were on the escape ship.
Yeah.
And the Revita Bowers, and you were like, and I gave you some note. You weren't supposed to say one line or something, and I watched you do it. And you start to say the word, but you didn't quite say it. And then we're like, okay, we're moving on. And I'm like, hey Wes, I know you almost said that word. You fucking saw that? I'm like, I saw it. It doesn't matter.
What's funny is if I've seen an actor and you kind of like, and he challenges you, and then you're like, okay, all right, that's fine, do it that way. And I'm like, that guy's never going to be on the show. The footage that's happening right now, he will never be on there.
Like the story you told about the big muscle guy. Like the director's like, oh yeah, go work that heavy bag over there. You'll be in the shot. Like never in any of the shots.
Through all day.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, so I was doing this movie, and there was a guy. I was doing this movie, and there was a guy. So we're getting ready to do it. It was an MMA movie. And there was a group of extras, and the director was picking out the people he wanted. Well, this guy rips his shirt off, pushes his way to the crowd, and goes to the crowd, and he's like, "Where do you want me? Like I'm the guy." And he was just like, he was one of the had that energy, right?
Right.
And the director's like, "Okay, all right, come on, yeah, that's great." So he goes, "All right, I want you over here, and I want you to be working this heavy bag. We're gonna be." He wasn't even lit. We were shooting on the other side of the warehouse, right? And we got so focused on what we're doing. And it's like towards the end of the night, we're trying to make the night, and every now and then you hear, he's still over there doing his stage because he didn't know that he wasn't on camera. And at the end, the director, we're leaving, we're packing up, and he's like, Oh yeah, you rapped.
And were your arms exhausted after doing that all day?
The moral of the story is don't make the director mad. They have complete control over what they're shooting.
I watched a director on a Friday night at like 3 a.m. send everyone else home and keep one actor and make him shoot another hour of horrible stuff because that actor had pissed him off.
Oh, not me. That was not me.
I
wouldn't do that.
I remember that.
No
I remember that story.
No names.
All right, Wes, take us home, baby.
Well, I've said this before. I think that one of the things that really moves me about The Expanse and what I think The Expanse is over, if I had to boil it down to what I think it was about, this is just me in my opinion, but all these characters, all these complex characters, like nobody is truly evil, nobody's truly good, but the spirit of humanity always comes out on top. And so I think for this final season and the whole message of The Expanse is one of hope to me. It gives me hope. And it gives me hope in our humanity. It gives me hope in our societies. And it's such a beautiful, inspiring thing to be a part of. And it really is in line with what I believe in the world and what I believe in. And my question to you guys is, being a part of this show and working on it like you have, what do you hope that people will take away from this experience of The Expanse?
That's for you, Naren. You're in the center.
I gotta think about
Ain't
this.
you in charge?
Yeah, come on, man.
Oh man, I mean that's what you're talking about is the thing I think that everybody loves about this show because Ty and Daniel would get the question early on about is this The Expanse a utopia or a dystopia, and it's it's neither of those things. It is not particular. It's not blind to human cruelty, but it is receptive to human decency, and I think that. I would say it's not that the good side of humanity doesn't always come out on top, but it sometimes comes out on top. And I think those are the occasions that you yearn for and that you fight for. And I think everybody who's worked on the show gets that sense, and it feels like we're saying something meaningful about people and human nature, and I think that's why people gravitate towards it.
I feel like there are projects that are unrelievedly nihilistic. Yeah. And there are projects that are unbelievably saccharine, and that's neither of those is ours.
Right.
We're not saying that everything's great. We're not saying that everything's awful. We're saying it's complicated.
Mm. Do you? And one thing that this is something that you guys have been. It's been the Expanse has been such a major part of your life for so long, and you guys, you still have 2 more books to go in the series. But this for you, not true. But this for you, now that you've been a part of this show. So we actors come on, directors come on. We do we work. We kind of part of it occupies our time. Then we go and we do something else. This is something that you've been a part of. You've been working on every day for 7-8 years. Have you begun to process that this is coming to an end, and what is that like?
It is. You're in that sort of I don't know, stages of grief sort of thing. I guess maybe
it's kind of a combination of stages of grief and stages of relief and partying.
It's look. It's rare when these things all kind of come together. You're working on a great project with good people and it's getting out there and people are seeing it, and this is one of those times. This is one everybody on the show really likes each other, and that doesn't always happen. It's we are.
Not everybody. Come on, jeez,
come on. Those things don't happen very often, and the level of commitment I think across the board from everybody involved in it. These are what make a project special, and so I'm gonna really miss it. I think it's one of those moments where it's gonna be sad to not be doing them anymore, but I think we can take a lot of pride and a lot of joy in what we accomplished together, and it's certainly an experience I think that all of us are gonna wanna recapture that tone in the things that we do, and we'll measure against it.
I think that's a good place to end. Yeah. Thank you guys for spending time with us. We appreciate it. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.
Oh my God.
Hey, don't criticize our creative outlet over here, all right? Don't come in and do that.
Oh, that was nice.
Now, get the fuck out.
You got it.